Okay, we're going for we're just going for achievements right now, so we're just gonna do another quick playthrough, which is gonna end really fast. Because we say nothing, and then say nothing. The guide approaches Bemele and me before I have time to sort out my thoughts.
You will stay.
What?
You would have already decided to come if you had the proper
I mean,
mindset
he's
for
not
a
wrong.
journey such as this. You two will stay.
But you don't understand.
The guide raises a hand to me, eyes cold. My words die in my throat. If he decides we aren't fit to cross, how could we persuade him otherwise?
This is bullshit! We are more than equipped to make this journey, and we know more of what it means to be in danger than most will know in all their life.
You two will stay.
Bemele's muscles tense, and I put a hand on his arm. He trembles slightly beneath my fingers, his hands curling themselves into fists, but he doesn't say another word. The guide turns around and heads onto the bridge. Margaret uncomfortably looks from the guide to us.
Goodbye.
Then she steps onto the bridge after him. Bemele sighs, the anger releasing from him as they disappear into the fog.
Farewell.
Be safe. We reached Hema safely, though it took much longer than we would have liked. Much of the village had been damaged or even destroyed. It was my fault for taking so long. I did all I could to aid them in defending their town and repairing what could be salvaged. Emily was disheartened by how little assistance we were able to provide. However, he could not deny how fortunate we were to have both made it at all, especially after we caught wind of the report given by the guide to the elders for that night. Every village close enough to Sinnlos gets informed on what occurs in that lake. He does so because communities wish to be made aware if they have lost one of their own. This time his news was the death of a young woman. The one we spoke to, Margaret, is gone. You had one person to guide, and you couldn't make it with her? You're a terrible guide. I have not heard nor seen the guide myself since then. I must assume he is still there on that foggy shore, waiting for desperate souls to seek out his light so they may cross the lake of true darkness. Although I regret that I was not able to do more to protect these people, no one admonishes me for it. They seem sure that I did everything possible. I hope that is true, even if I cannot bring myself to believe it. Soon Bemele and I will return home, and we will once again take the long way around. I just got an achievement called Safe. My one piece in all of this is that Sinnlos will be far behind me in a matter of days. I intend to keep it there. And that's the really, really short playthrough. Then there's a fifth playthrough. And then the sixth one is, I guess, the guide, finally. So let's start this one. You're quite informed. I believe we should go. Not seriously. Apparently we wait. I think Bemele will die. Here, possibly. It lunges at Bemele. It hits his legs and he goes down, taking me with him. We slam against the bridge, our lantern's light blinking out as it hits the wood. We're engulfed in darkness and fog, and before I can do anything, a Nyx reaches out from the edge of the bridge and clings to Bemele. It pulls hard, separating the two of us. Bemele quickly slides nearer the edge as the Nyx retreats. Bemele struggles to loosen the monster's long fingers from him to no avail. I lunge forward, but my hands only slap the surface of the bridge. I try to crawl closer, yet I can't keep up with the rapid pace of the horror playing out in front of me. Margaret rushes over to me, bathing me in her lantern's light and scaring away another Nyx at the surface's edge. The Nyx with Bemele likewise dives fully back in the black waters, dragging him completely off the side. Ooh, a CG. I scramble to the edge and Bemele is there, flailing to keep above water. Before I can even extend a hand towards him, he's violently yanked underneath. The surface of the water grows still again in just a few seconds, as if the entire altercation didn't happen, as if Bemele hadn't just been taken, as if he'd never been here in the first place. I stare down at the void in disbelief. A clicking, cluttering sound, like the whining of cicadas, erupts around us. The Nyxi are laughing. A hand grips my shoulder. The guide pulls Margaret and I back over to the center of the bridge, grabbing my lantern and holding it in front of my face.
Relighted. We're moving forward.
I stare at the lantern, unable to move.
What happened here? It didn't happen. Not until we reach the shore. Pretend he will be there on the other side. Whatever it takes. Get up.
I rise to my feet, barely conscious of what's happening. Margaret helps stabilize me. The guide holds out the lantern again, and this time I take it. My free hand slips into my pouch, pulling out a box of matches. I get one out and hold it up in front of my face. Can't seem to figure out what to do next. Margaret gently takes the match from my hand, relighting my lantern for me. As the light bursts to life and shines across her face, I feel like crying. The guide nods and begins forward again. Stiffly, I follow, the box of matches crumpling in my grip. Margaret, now sure that I'm as okay as I can be, catches up to the guide, but remains closer to me than she did before.
What happened to the other lantern?
It was taken after the light went out.
What conversation there was or could have been gets no further. It barely penetrates my mind. Margaret hovers nearby, watching me with clear worry on her face. I want to say something, I want to reassure her, but I feel like I'm barely even in my own body. Nothing feels real. I can't accept Bemele being gone. I can't accept that he's gone for good, just like that. He can't have just disappeared. The guide's words float through my mind, and it's remarkably easy to believe what he said. Bemele will be waiting for me on the other side, or maybe he'll be in the tavern when I make it back home, clapping me on the back and commending me for a job well done. He'll be laughing and drinking as he usually does, starting a fuss with the other guards. He can't just be gone. It can't be that I won't see his face again. A dim, unusual noise penetrates the fog of my mind, and I realize Margaret is trying to talk to me. Her words sound far away, like she's speaking through a tunnel. She smiles nervously at me. I only look at her. The smile slides off her face. Instead, she stays by my side, walking forward with me.
Huh?
Something is pulling on my arm. Warmth penetrates my cloth armor, and the feeling grounds me slightly in my body. Margaret is whispering to me, pulling me forward and pointing at the guide. My eyes follow her finger, and I realize the guide is getting further away.
He's moving faster.
And then I snap back into awareness. Danger is still afoot, and Margaret is still alive. Shame trickles down my neck, shame for having lost my wits. I'm not supposed to be this way. I double my speed, feet pounding against the hard wood. The sound and the rhythm soothe me, enough to fully clear my mind.
Thank you for telling me, Margaret.
I say it quietly, so quietly I'm sure she can't hear, but as Margaret runs past me, getting into her original position, she pants in response.
You're welcome.
We go faster and faster until suddenly we're full on sprinting across the slick wooden boards. I think maybe I can skip here. Yes. Apparently I need to turn. I make a hard turn, following the guide and leaving Margaret at the rear. Yeah, I think this is where she dies, because we get an achievement at the end of this called Alone. I'm just going to spoil that right now. Out the corner of my eye, I see Margaret turn around and try to come back to us, only to have the bridge in front of her fall away. I slow down for a breath, feeling the impulse to turn back, but ignore it. There's no time. Margaret can make the jump, and then she'll rejoin us. I keep my eyes glued to the guide's back, ears perked for Margaret's footsteps approaching behind us. And then I hear it. A scream. I whip around, sliding to a stop. Margaret is sinking. The bridge she's on is sinking into the water. She's disappearing. She didn't jump.
What are you doing?
Margaret's head shoots up, her face drained of all color.
Jump!
She stumbles near the edge of the bridge, staring at the placid water of the lake. Even from a distance, I can see her shaking. I can't say if it's from the bridge's descent or her own fear. She barely seems to remain standing. I swallow painfully. Margaret bends and tries to jump. She curves in a small arc, achieving more height than she should, and lands directly in the lake with a muted splash. I start running again, leaving Margaret flailing in the water behind me. I don't want to watch this. I know exactly what will happen to her now. Margaret's anguished cries pierce the night, then the screaming stops. My legs grow weak. It isn't right, but I push myself to keep going. I try to focus on the pounding of my feet, but my brain won't cooperate. Instead, I imagine Margaret's terror as she's clawed to pieces by the Nixie. After everything, I didn't help her. We left her in the dark. As the night wears on, our strength rapidly fades. How much longer will this last? People have to rest sometime. Almost as if in response to my thought, the guide abruptly halts. I skid to a stop as well, sliding on the surface of the wood. The guide stares at something slightly out of view. I step up to join him, following his gaze further down the path. I think we may be able to skip here. Haven't we lost enough as it is? Blah blah blah. Blah blah blah.
Are you well, stranger?
Do you know why you're here? He glances up at me.
I'm fine.
No.
He lifts his head, wide eyes looking up at me
You
incredulously.
need a lantern in order to ward off the Nixie. The light.
Could hear a cat. The guide interjects curtly.
If he is to come, then you along with him will need to travel split off from myself.
Raw wrath boils up. I just want like to get this one done with. It's not one I'm very interested in. Why is he being so unreasonable? He should not care if this man comes along. He has never let the presence of another person impact his own safety regardless. Okay, I turn a choked gulp into a headstrong huff. I raise my eyes to glower directly into his. I know an opponent I cannot defeat when I duel with one, but that doesn't mean I can't make my disgust clear.
All right. We will stay behind.
I keep my voice leveled until the sharp bite at the end. The guide makes eye contact with the newcomer one final time before turning and advancing forward, leaving us in his dimming lantern light. As I watch him move forward, I continue to seethe. My thoughts drift to all the events that have unfolded this dreaded night. Against my own wishes, I begin to feel torn between all the regrets and sympathies I have for Bemele and Margaret, and the acknowledgement that it is because such things happen that the guide is likely refusing to take any chances. I don't understand how I'm supposed to feel or what I am meant to do anymore. My head starts to reel, leaving me with the only option there has ever been, pushing the emotions to the corners of my mind. The mission is all that matters for now. I release another bated breath and just barely shake my head. You should go after him. Apparently there's no fucking thing there. I widen my eyes, startled. Apparently he doesn't have any lines right now. He's no voice. There's still time. You should go after him. Staying with me isn't worth it. I study him, momentarily speechless from the madness of his suggestion.
No. I'm not going to let you die out here. I'll do whatever it takes to ensure your safety.
I hate to be a bummer, but you are gonna leave him. At that bit of power, the bit of power he seems to be whisked off his shoulders like a thin cape. He shrinks back into himself, silent once more. It is a relief to have this matter fully settled. I'd be damned if I let him stroll off into a certain early end.
We should start walking. What are you doing out here without
Can
the
I
guide?
skip now? Yes.
Honestly,
It's
I really don't care. Let me get the guide back up. Okay. We keep our pace racing across the bridges, but there's no sign of the guide anywhere. I begin to fear that we may never be able to catch up with him. Can we skip again? Nope. I tighten my grip on him, moving forward. Need to make it out of here. I flip my face back to Lou, my expression unaffected. I'm not going to allow panic to sap us of judgment.
Let's look for another branch.
I resolutely begin tracing our path. He follows without protest. Our regression is silent except for our footfalls and the snapping of soggy wood attempting to burn. We frequently have to step over smouldering sections trying to come alight. Oh, here we go. Before either of us can sink further, I hastily address
hear that?
Lou.
we should go right.
Okay, beside me, Lou is still fast asleep. The guide, however, is nowhere to be seen. I notice Lou begin to stir. This is new because no one else is here.
Hello.
Nothing.
We should-
Don't worry about me.
You won't make it very far.
No.
I'm sorry, I'm skipping things. I just don't care that much.
The Nixie will not tread before the sun.
I'm sorry for what happened last night.
What happened last night?
You would have been better off.
Do you mean what?
Yes, you got caught up in the fire and it was a disaster.
It's all right.
It was closer to being. I never should.
Oh god, I don't care. I'm so sorry, I don't care. Like, I'm gonna speak with the guide. Apparently I have to do this, but sadly I can't skip because I don't have the option on. Alright, let's just do it. Okay, I push my way through the branches and reach the other shore of the island. I look for the guide, but he is nowhere in sight. How? Where could he have gone? I search the area further without success. The island is not in any way large. If I have not found him, it can only be because he does not wish to be found. I sigh as all motivation leaves me. I think I simply need to be alone. It seems as though my wish to be alone that's the achievement. I just got the achievement alone. It seems as though my wish to be alone will be granted. There's no sign that they will be returning. A cold chill somehow whips its way down my back, despite the calm of the air. I keep my gaze on the dark ground, taking a breath so deep it stings the back of my throat. As I steadily empty my lungs, I try to empty my mind of all thoughts. I do not know what I'm doing anymore. Nothing is straightforward. I find something familiar and powerful in my thoughts and latch on. The mission. I have to try and focus on the mission. I need to be strong. My eyes start back up. Someone watching. I wonder if I'm afraid of being seen struggling like this, or if I hope I may not be on my own here. Doesn't matter, there is still nothing but the silent island. Time seems so indefinite around me, passing slowly. On this island, it almost seems to move slow as a stagnant pond. I shake my head, burying the thought. It's irrational, but I cannot bear to think of even old pond water. Gradually, my consciousness begins to include the world again. I do a few standard warm-up stretches, testing my mind and body. I don't know how long it's been, but I feel I have regained enough of my wits to continue on. I need to make sure everything is alright. I head through the wooded part of the island. There isn't anything that could be called a path, but I managed to pick my way through the bush quite well. Through a thinner strand of trees, I briefly catch sight of the guide standing on one of the beaches. He seems fine, but even though I'm sure... Can I skip this part? No. I continue my check without heeding that. I find that I've been pacing back and forth for quite some time. I finished my check a while ago, so now I've nothing left to do but aimlessly wander. I'm overcome with restlessness. This island may be safer than the bridges, but that is far from enough to ease the mind. I quietly sigh and decide to wait on my own. If I go back now, whoever I encounter will know that I don't want to be alone. That is more troubling than simply staying where I am. I sit down and silently listen to the ambience of the island as I wait for time to pass. I can only hope this will all end before I can no longer keep myself together. Can I skip now? No. I feel relieved that it is almost time to leave the island. A chill slips down my spine at the thought of what comes next, however. It isn't too long before I hear someone approaching from within the brush. It's the guide. He emerges from the bushes and steps out into the open. He doesn't respond to my greeting. Instead, he narrows his eyes, causing the tension to rise that much further.
Lou is gone. He's dead.
Ow. I nearly fall backwards from his words.
What?
Seconds tick by and the guide says nothing as my panic pounds higher, harder, and takes full control of my mind. This is not possible. No, this is a mistake.
We have to go look for him.
I would not claim this without good reason. Wait and you'll see. Night will fall and Lou will not come to me.
Alright, how do you know he's dead? How did he die?
We are the only two remaining.
How did he die? I got an achievement called Sorry. Why? Doesn't say I should get that. I do sink down to the ground at that, all my thoughts, the sound of my breath coming in and out of my very heartbeat forming two letters. No, no, no. I cut my hands against my head. Why? I look up to the towering, stoic face of the guide, begging for an explanation. Something, anything but this. He gives no comfort. My tears start and stop from one moment to the next with my wildly tumultuous emotions. I am in brutal agony, bawling my eyes out and shouting indecipherably. Then I am feeling nothing, laying in a cool void where everything seems inconsequential and so far away from me. Emily, Margaret, Lou. The heartbeat comes back. I have failed. I failed them. I failed every single one of them. Couldn't help anyone. I sniff back deeply, tears falling down my face once more. I manage a small miracle. I stand. The guide says nothing. I'm left with just my own thoughts and the heartbeat softly drumming as we wait for the tortuous bridges to surface. I lean against the tree, slowly reminding myself how to walk again as time runs by too fast or drags on too slow. A blanket of stars slowly creeps over the horizon. As the day truly descends into night, I still hold on to a desperate, unreasonable flicker of hope that eventually Lou will appear through the bushes, ready to continue the journey. He never does. My hope is blown out by the wind rushing across the lake. Suddenly, there is a gurgling. The water parts as the bridges of Sinnlos rise, powered by some unnatural force, creaking like they might fall apart. We walk onto the wide open shore. Thick, inky water sloshes reluctantly off the boards, bleeding back into the lake until finally it stills. I feel an inexplicable pounding like a hammer in the back of my head, beating faster and heavier than my own heart. I clench my teeth to stop it from churning my stomach. The guide is quick to return to the bridges, making haste towards them. That gets my
The island
attention.
is no longer safe now that the sun has set.
Yeah. I understand what he is saying. Still, I return my attention to the lake. For a moment, I listen to the near silence of the water, steeling myself for what is to come. Then I place my feet firmly onto the dock. Against what any natural instincts would advise me, I have returned to the misty labyrinth of bridges. Tried to synchronize my inhalations with my footfalls to steady my breathing. The guide and I make no attempts to converse with one another. We are as quiet as the lake we are crossing. It feels as though barely any time has passed when I realize that half the night has crept by. We encountered a few sunken bridges which forced us to reroute, while other paths were rotten enough to make us stagger our steps. However, the biggest threat of all is eerily absent: the prowlers. I haven't seen more than shadowy glimpses of them down other paths, and even those may have simply been tricks of the fog. I feel I may be even more on edge tonight than the last. I ponder whether they're still weary from the consuming blaze that lit up the night yesterday, or if there are less dragging themselves across the bridges than usual because many have already gotten what they wanted. My skin crawls with the touch of icy fingers at the thought, and I can't control the sharp shiver that travels down my spine. I look ahead towards the guide pensively before coming to a decision.
Where might the prowlers be?
He doesn't respond. Perhaps he didn't hear me. I debate whether to repeat my question or not before he suddenly replies.
Allowing others to die is an easy path to follow. It is keeping them alive that makes it so difficult for one to cross Sinnlos.
That isn't an answer to my question. Its vagueness feels intentional. His avoidance doesn't stop the horrifying realization from coming to my mind. I still live because they died. This isn't right. I try to swallow, but my mouth is a desert. It shouldn't have happened like this. I promised I would protect everyone, not benefit from their deaths. Every step on the damp wood, my feet feel more like lead. I feel the weight of them on my feet, like I am dragging their remains with me as they wonder why we could not help them. My body moves unbidden, unable to stop even with my thoughts in tatters. The notion that something might still be out there, that all of this could come to an end, calls me onward. After hours of navigating the complex maze of bridges, the faint silhouette of the shore creeps into view. My eyes widen at the sight. It is almost unbelievable that we could have come this far. The guide increases his pace, and I cautiously follow suit. We near the very end of the bridges. I can smell the trees and the earth, and even through the fog I can almost count the remaining bridges between us and the land. Oh. But between the end and us, a prowler appears. I eye the monster intently. It makes no move to leave us, so I turn to the guide instead.
Take my lantern. Once it's scared off, we'll make our way to the shore. It shouldn't be an issue with its.
Why does he need your lantern when he has one of his own? The guide says nothing, however. He extends his hand to accept my offer. I feel my body tense for a moment before relinquishing my light to the guide. It's not much farther. I'm sure we can make it. The guide slowly steps ahead. He and the creature brace for confrontation. I stay close enough to the guide's back to keep from being left behind in the darkness. He quietly whispers,
Be ready to run. Don't get left behind.
He then darts forward and launches the light directly at the prowler. It makes a snarling hiss as it retreats, defeated back into the black waters. Neither of us waste even a second looking back. We push forward. I race across the bridges, desperately trying to keep the guide's light-edged figure in clear sight. I run as fast as I can possibly manage without slipping on the boards. We run across the entire way, spurred on by the shoreline rapidly approaching. Miraculously, I feel my feet plunge into dirt. I stumble forwards, nearly collapsing onto the ground while trying to catch my breath. It feels as though I've come out of a long dream. We made it. After a moment of processing everything that had just happened and pulling myself together, I rise fully to my feet and stand tall. I turn back towards the lake. Fog drifts across the empty, stagnant waters, as menacing as when I first laid eyes on it. I can't bear to tear my eyes away from the sight. It's as though reality halts and I stare deeply at the surface. I shake away the sensation. I'm alive, I've made it across, and now I will be able to unite with the villagers and remove brigadiers? That word is really wrong. Isn't it like, I don't know, brigands or something? I can't remember. But at what cost? My mind turns over itself. I can still faintly feel wet, rigid hands on my ankle, a ghostly reminder of the Nixie. I know the hands are not real, but that doesn't loosen their grip. My feelings simmer beneath my own surface, fighting for dominance. Gratitude, anger, relief, guilt, hope, and sorrow are battling inside of me. They pull in so many different directions at once that I can't even think. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. My turmoil abruptly ends at the sound of the guide's voice.
You can't stay.
I finally rip my eyes away from the lake. I fix them instead directly on the guide.
There is nothing left for you here. You must return to the world and leave this place behind.
All of my words are stuck sorely in my throat. I'm completely parched and my mouth is threatening to close in on itself. He fills the silence once more.
I expect to never see you again.
The guide looks at me harshly, almost pleadingly, as he gazes into my eyes. All I can offer is a slow, weak nod. I don't want this to be the way things are. I can't accept it. I'm consumed by a whirlpool of thoughts. I wasn't able to help anyone. I am entirely alone. As I continue to stare at the guide, tears well up in my eyes and threaten to spill over. He gives me no acknowledgement at all. I wipe the feeling from my face completely. I must continue on. I have no other choice left before me. On quaking legs, I march forward solemnly into the forest. I swear I keep hearing. I do not look back even once at the cursed lake during my retreat. However, I offer one last word.
Farewell.
Farewell. I whisper softly, almost silently. It's a bitter farewell to all those who failed to escape the darkness and are lost forever. I can scarcely remember the rest of the trip. All I know for sure is that I did arrive in Hemmer in time to help. They were grateful to see me, for it was a desperate situation indeed. The urgency meant that my mind was occupied with other matters. I worked tirelessly to aid Hemmer's own guards in forcing back the brigands, I guess. But during the moments of calm, when the sun went down, I would remember the lake. The villagers were alarmed when I arrived on my own, but it did not take them long to guess what must have happened to Bemele. Soon their suspicions of what transpired were confirmed, as leaders in the community need to be made aware of what occurs on Sinnlos in case they have lost one of their own. The townsfolk were deeply sympathetic towards me after learning that I was there to witness 3 souls being lost to the dark waters. It was a slight comfort. The guilt at my failure remained sharp, even still. I have not heard nor seen the guide since then. He will remain obscured in that realm of fog and fear, a mysterious light off in the distance that is ever out of reach of the real world. I know that I will return to my village soon. Despite my own feelings, I must not let them know how this journey has affected me. I need to be strong. There is no other way. It's got the achievement called Death. Alright, finally that one's over. Next, we will be doing the guide. Okay, so yeah, I will see you in the next and the last video. Bye.